All right, welcome to the conversation. It's anniversary today. You know what it is? 10th year anniversary of WolfPAC. All right, so WolfPAC was founded to get corrupting influence of big money out of politics. I know that because I founded it, and it has done some spectacular things, which we're going to talk about in a minute. It's also had its share of challenges, but in order to talk about it, we brought on the backbone of WolfPAC, and that is amazing volunteers at the different state levels. So today joining us, Aaron Blackford for Indiana State Director for WolfPAC, and Aaron Bishop, the Washington Deputy Organizing Director. Aaron's, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, great to have you. All right, so guys, it's not an easy mission because it's nonpartisan. So you got to get Democrats and Republicans to agree. Otherwise, we can't get an amendment because you need 3/4 of the states. So not you guys in specific, but 10 years ago, we started this at Occupy Wall Street, and I gave you guys a very difficult mission. So now let's check back in on how it's going. Let's go to Aaron from Indiana first. Give us a sense of how it's going in your state.
Well, it's going kind of slow. So we have been introduced a couple of different times, and we've had a lot of support on the Republican side. And it just seems to be one of those things where they're not really ready to bite the bullet and get in there and show that like we really are going to take a stance. Every time that we put in for an Article 5 convention, they pull the Article 5 call and they just say, yeah, Congress should do something about this, but we all know how that's going. So we have some really dedicated volunteers and they are doing all of the important stuff that needs to be done. We just seem to need more boots on the ground, and we need to fill in some more districts with volunteer representation.
Okay, so I want to come back to what you said there about an Article 5 convention, because I'm sure a lot of folks at home don't know what that means. But before we get there, I want you guys to understand both the progress and the challenges. And in Washington, we had a lot of amazing progress. It was actually one of our best moments in some ways. I'm going to come back to that in a second as well. But first, let me tell you guys what WolfPAC has done in the last 10 years. It's actually passed in 5 different states, calling for a convention to actually get free and fair elections. And that's how you can realistically get an amendment. We'll explain that in a second. But it's already passed in 5 states, including the largest state in the country, California. 40 states have had legislation introduced. That's a lot of states where these are all of the folks that you see are almost all volunteers. There's a couple of staffers that say this is a very unusual organization. It's totally grassroots. It's not led by politicians at all, okay? And that's why we've got the 2 wonderful volunteers today. And they're everywhere, but more. 21 legislative chambers have had legislation actually pass, introduced in 40, passed in different chambers in 21. And if you're wondering, only 5 states, 21 legislatures, that's because sometimes the House will pass it and the Senate won't. Sometimes the Senate will pass it and the House won't. In fact, then they'll switch, we'll get into that. But also, as Aaron mentioned, there's 7 Republican-controlled committees have passed it, and 3 Republican-controlled legislative chambers have passed it as well. So that means it is truly nonpartisan. There are Republicans that are in favor of cleaning up elections. That shouldn't be surprising to Republicans. And there are Democrats who are in favor of it and have been for a long time. So with that background, Aaron, still from Indiana, you mentioned Article 5 convention. Can you explain to folks, if we're looking to get money out of politics or do free and fair elections, election reform in any way to clean up campaign finance and other issues that are related to elections, why do you need to go to a convention, and what does an Article 5 convention mean?
So an Article 5 convention essentially just means that the states together can come together and they can propose an amendment to the Constitution with the same amount of power that Congress has. And it's important to do so right now because there have been some very detrimental Supreme Court decisions that have come down that have affected the campaign finance system in a negative way. And the only way to trump the Supreme Court in the United States is through an amendment to the Constitution. Congress isn't willing to cut their own paychecks, so we have to cut that corruption out ourselves through the states.
Yes, so you don't need Washington at all. That's a beautiful thing about this. And we know Washington's not gonna do it. You get 2/3 of Congress is gonna say, oh yeah, get rid of the thing that funds all of our campaigns and is a source of our power. That's not gonna happen unless you put a world of pressure through the states or simply do the convention. You could propose an amendment without Washington. Okay, and that's what, and it's Article 5 in the Constitution. That's why it's called an Article 5 convention. Okay, Aaron from Washington. So I remember going down to Washington, and so tell us, like, it's a long story what happened in Washington. It's got ups and downs, but I think it's really instructive for both the opportunities and the challenges. So tell us what happened there from the beginning.
So yeah, we've gotten really close in Washington State. In fact, we had one of the best showings of volunteers actually showing up to the Capitol in 2019, as you know, Cenk, because you were there. We had over 400 people show up. The legislators were like floored how many people we had actually been able to amass to our Capitol. But one of the biggest problems that we've had this past legislative year is the fact that when they went virtual, it meant that everybody was able to actually show up to the Capitol because they could do it from their home. And so you had tons of people, and I'm not just talking about like dozens of people, I'm talking about thousands of people show up to testify, to tax the rich, to help try to get Black Lives Matter movement progress through and things of that nature. And so like Washington State has been really crucial, and we've had like 400 people. We had 400 people actually show up to our last committee hearing, but those numbers aren't moving anymore. We need more and more volunteers to actually get involved. We need as many people as we can get to show up when they can.
So the way you guys can do that is wolf-pac.com/go. And so that's where you can volunteer, you can donate, you can do either. You could just look at it and do neither, but at least take a look at it and see if you like it. The community at WolfPAC is so amazing. The camaraderie there probably is alone is worth it. But think about it, guys. Something that gets almost no media attention, obviously outside of this show, somehow miraculously did what almost no group can do. I mean, most groups cannot get 400 people to show up to a national event in Washington, as in Washington, D.C. Aaron's group got 400 people to show up in the state of Washington at their state house. I've never seen volunteers like WolfPAC volunteers because, and I'm not saying this to be schmaltzy, it really is true. They're the most patriotic people I've ever seen. And they're hopeful, they're optimistic, and they've done amazing things together. And you could join them and you could make a giant difference. So now in terms of how to do that, Aaron from Washington, I'll stick with you on this one too. There's lots of different ways of volunteering, right? Now it's a big organization, almost all volunteers. So there's the communications team that's wonderful. What are the different things that folks can do at WolfPAC?
So one of the things they can do is just volunteer to just send emails, just call. This is like the basic of WolfPAC volunteering. You can get in more deeper into organizing, where you actually reach out to fellow people at WolfPAC to let them know, hey, we've got a committee hearing coming up. We need you to show up. We need you to testify. What's great right now is because virtually we're able to actually like submit what we want to say without actually stepping foot in the Capitol. So in 2021, or 2022 actually, because it's gonna be in January. We're actually doing like a hybrid model here in Washington State, where they're gonna have it in session and they're gonna go in, and then they're also going to allow people to do things virtually. So I would definitely check in with your state and see what they're doing, but it's so easy to get involved these days, and we need everybody as possible. Myself, I'm a deputy organizing director, so I'm actually helping the organizers figure out what we're doing, whether we're reaching out to our legislators that week, whether we're building a coalition with some other group. I really personally wanna get involved in the Poor People's Campaign myself and get that kind of coalition built there. There's so much you can do these days.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. I just, right before the interview, tweeted about the Poor People's Campaign. So apparently we're like-minded. And we're certainly like-minded in wanting to get corruption out. We just did the show on Monday where literally half the stories were about corruption. Take money from drug companies, serve drug companies. Take money from energy companies, serve energy companies. This is so obvious. And WolfPAC is just about the only organization that's actually trying to do something about it. Like trying super hard for something tangible, not like, oh, maybe we'll change the Supreme Court in 30 or 40 years from now. No, you just get the states to call for a convention. We have one, we propose an amendment, and then we see if we can get it passed. You still need 3/4 of the states, but at least you've got a fighter's chance. So wolf-pac.com/go, find out more about it. Thank you, we appreciate it, and keep on going. Everybody, wolf-pac.com/go. We'll have the link down below. Make sure you go and check it out. Thank you, Aaron and Eric.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. Now,
We'll see.
Poor Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? Now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, easy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone.
Okay, sorry, I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me into Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby.
You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
Charlie Turk.
No, wait a minute, don't you dare.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
That's it, we will settle it.
She's cute. I didn't say that about Laura Ingraham.
Scandal at TYT. Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good boss.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
Meanwhile, in the Arctic, you know where this is going. You watch the Damage Report, the Arctic's on fire. Obviously, why would we be talking about the Arctic except to tell you that it's melting once again? The Republicans aren't that interested in it. I wonder why. Lift out of poverty up to 3.7 million people, including an estimated 1.3 million children. Hashtag save the children? Not if it costs money. I mean, come on.
What's happening? I'm Dr. Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey. Here's the bottom line. I play no games about policy, period. Too many people's lives are at stake. So here's what I do. I challenge conservative ideology that hinders the growth of this country. I make sure we place our facts in proper context, and I have no problem debating anyone on a position that I have. Progressives have the ideas to change the world, but when you really look at it, progressives have always change this world for the better. I want you to tune into my new show, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, right here on the TYT network, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. I'll see you there.
Everything that we've accomplished over the years is because of our members who've allowed us to remain independent of corporate interests and reach 20 million followers. Now is the time to bring as many people into the progressive movement as possible. We're inviting you to be the change and help bring a community-powered progressive change machine to life. Details are at tyt.com/change. If you're a member, thank you. We need you to remain so. If you're one of the thousands of viewers out there who's not a member yet, the time has come for you to join now. We need you more than ever. tyt.com/change. All right, we got a twist for you guys now in the conversation. We're gonna talk to one of the writers of the Batman series about a potentially nefarious family that's secretly ruling a lot of this country. All that is true, but there are a lot of twists and turns. Jonathan Larson also happens to be the managing editor of TYT and has written about the family, which is, well, I guess I don't know that, Jonathan, that they would describe themselves as a political organization, but they certainly are, especially based on your reporting. So before we do anything else, and we'll get back to Batman in a minute, for the folks who don't know, what is the family?
So the family is AKA the Fellowship Foundation. It's known popularly as the family because a book about them by that name, and which was made into a Netflix documentary series a few years ago. So that's what they're popularly known as. What they are is a Christian, although they would dispute that, organization. They say they are followers of Jesus. They don't lay claim to any specific denomination. And to your point earlier, they do say that they're not political. That has been their claim, but they also like to not have their political activities exposed or made public. So the National Prayer Breakfast is run by them, but if you didn't know better, you would think from the letters that get sent out every year that it's actually hosted by members of Congress who happen to be part of the weekly prayer breakfast, prayer meetings, in both the House and the Senate, which, by the way, are also tied to the Fellowship Foundation. And it's, of course, it's been scandalous over the years. I shouldn't say of course, but it has been scandalous over the years because some of their theological leanings of some of the people in charge and some of the people in positions of influence have affected events on the world stage, let's say.
Yeah, so and through this series, we had Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy, yell at you. That was fun. I hope he didn't start a pillow fight with you. Okay, we'll get back to that. And I'm amused by the idea of like, no, this is not strictly a Christian organization. No, we're just about Jesus. Well, okay, that gives you some indication. Now, mind you, Muslims also believe in Jesus as a prophet, but probably not going overly Muslim direction with these meetings. But speaking of which brings us to the most prominent pastor probably in the country, Franklin Graham. And he is certainly right-wing, very big-time Trump supporter. Now, a partisan like him wouldn't be involved with the family, would he, Jonathan?
I like how you act as though you haven't read the story and don't know it very well. That's good, that's good. But yes, of course, to your point, his dad, Billy Graham, was an even more well-known, more influential evangelical preacher in this country and was the co-founder, possibly the most important co-founder of the National Prayer Breakfast in its first iteration, 3. And so it turns out that the prayer breakfast is still to this day being funded, albeit overtly, by Franklin Graham, specifically through the massive nonprofit charitable organization runs.
John, did you find out all the other progressive organizations that Franklin Graham is funding?
Well, right, he does not. And the two organizations, Samaritan's Purse, which does relief, and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, which does evangelism, literally crusades, they are quite open about their politics when it comes to political matters that they believe are addressed in the Bible. So they are very openly anti-reproductive rights, against abortion, very openly anti-LGBTQ, and they're also both at the forefront of this global movement that you have now for religious freedom, which sounds fantastic, and lots of people on the left would have no qualms about signing up with that cause. But it's being used as sort of a wedge to ensure the freedom of people to discriminate against others, because that's the exercise of their religion. So Franklin Graham is not funding left-wing groups, and also more to the point, left-wing groups are not funding the National Prayer Breakfast or the Fellowship Foundation, which runs it. Franklin Graham, as we reported, is literally the only donor to the breakfast. Their only source of breakfast revenue, aside from the ticket fees, the registration fees that attendees and guests have to pay.
Right. So Jonathan mentioned crusades. There, of course, in this case, they're rhetorical, moral, and the problem is political crusades, and they don't divide evenly between left and right, as the reporting indicates. And you can go to tyt.com/investigations, and we'll put a link in the description box that you can check out. They're not nonpartisan. All of their political leanings are anti-choice, unsurprisingly, and certainly very anti-LGBT, especially abroad. Those stories are amazing. Unsurprising that Mike Lindell got roped into this, and that's where the conflict with Jonathan came into effect here. But you might be wondering, if you're in the audience, wait, okay, so it's a right-wing organization. Why are we having this conversation? Congratulations, guys. You uncovered that the right wing is right wing. But Jonathan, that's not how they present, and a lot of Democrats participate in this, don't they?
Well, that's exactly right. And of course, doing this series on any of evangelical organizations that are out there pursuing the same causes, because this one is uniquely at the nexus of religion and politics. And the reason they can keep feet in both worlds is because Democratic allies of the organization consistently every year step up with the story that this is a non-political organization, and even to some extent give it the sheen, no pun intended, if you've heard of Bishop Sheen, but they give it the impression of being an official event, right? Their names appear as members of Congress with the Great Seal of the United States, and that letter goes out to people all around the world. And so then the local media can now report, oh, local right-wing pastor was invited by the US Congress to attend this event. And what that does is that empowers that guy in his home country. It enables him to justify whatever expenses are involved with attending, where he can also network, but it also means that back home, the people that he's interested in influencing, they now know, oh, this guy is going to get to meet with the president and top evangelicals in Congress. That gives them power, and we're not the first to make this point. Jeff Sharlet certainly made that point this summer. An organization called the European Parliamentary Forum on Sexual and Reproductive Rights, which is members of parliaments throughout Europe that work on this. They specifically said prayer breakfasts are used by these far-right groups to grow their networks. And in response to some of our reporting, as you know, an LGBTQ organization called Forbidden Colors specifically warned Democrats about participating in these events because it empowers politicians who are then working actively right now to enact anti-LGBTQ legislation and also anti-women, anti-reproductive rights. So these are real effects that are happening right now, in part because Democrats are helping maintain this fiction.
Right, so it's a comprehensive series, and there's lots of examples of them doing right-wing things, and it's so plentiful that it becomes obvious. Like, that's why I was joking around, like, oh, TYT investigates, they uncovered a right-wing organization being right-wing, but a lot of Democrats still participate. So Jonathan, some have pulled back, partly based on our reporting when we've asked them, and some still remain. So just give us a quick update on the status of that. Who pulled out?
Well, so
and how?
yeah,
like
so
what percentage? Super roughly here.
We've had almost half a dozen, I would say, who have given us comments since we began reporting on the National Prayer Breakfast, saying, I wasn't aware of this and I have concerns about this at a minimum right now. Ann Kirkpatrick is a Democratic member of Congress, and her spokesperson told us if we had known that anti-LGBTQ leaders were being invited in my name, I never would have lent my name to this cause, that kind of thing. So there's definitely some sense out there that there's a growing awareness, I would say. And by the way, that group I've mentioned earlier, Forbidden Colors, they've communicated directly with members of Congress saying, we would like you to know this. So it's not like we're the only ones saying that this matters and that Democrats need to pay attention. And you don't even have to argue that the event has to go away, but at a minimum, if it's going to be portrayed as a semi-official event, where's the transparency? We have no idea who gets invited. We have no idea who decides who gets invited or how or why. People are being discriminated against. LGBTQ leaders are not being invited. Black leaders on the left, religious black leaders on the left, not being invited. So,
all right, Jonathan Larson from TYT Investigates, breaking the hell out of stories. Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.